All right, and we're back. That was a little awkward. I'm having some tech issues, some small tech issues. But this is Timey-Wimey Tea Time. It's not episode 15. It's actually XTC002. And today is December 13th, 2014. We had a little bit of timey-wimey, wibbly-wobbly stuff going on there. I am doing the show solo today, for those that missed the first half. First 30 minutes, really. Stan may not be with us any longer. So, we will miss him, but he's got a new calling, something that he feels is more important. And I respect that. Things change, life happens. But I think we're good to go now, and we're going to try to wrap this up quickly. We're talking about Spearhead from space, and classic Doctor Who. You know, I still love it. It's still good stuff going back to it. Some people may say that going back to classic Doctor Who is a little rough because you have these 4-episode stories that are comparable to today's 1 or 2 episode story arcs, but I like it better. I think it was better, even though there was more filler. Like, there's some silly things like watching the Doctor, John Pertwee driving around in Old Bess. Why is the Doctor driving when he can use the TARDIS? What a TARDIS malfunctioning? So there you go. And he's also trying to be more of a human and deny his existence, his nature of being, Gallifreyan, a Time Lord. It's a constant struggle he has throughout the whole series, but here he's definitely trying to be more of a human than a humanoid or an alien. So I think it's very important to have those little aspects in there. You could say those things are filler, but they add to the dynamics of the characterization. It makes the Doctor far more approachable, I would say. So Spearhead from space definitely is, it kicks off an era for the Doctor where he's much more of a human than anything else, as was Patrick Troughton. William Hartnell had that commanding presence. You could tell he was an alien. He was a little more serious. He didn't have those human emotions, but he started to find them endearing. But it's just interesting seeing the evolution of the Doctor. And when you compare the 3rd Doctor, portrayed by John Pertwee in Spearhead from Space, to the 12th Doctor, it gives you a little bit of perspective. So let's revisit the 12th Doctor. Let's not delay it any further. So I think one of the biggest things to look at before you could judge Series 8 fairly and fully is the Doctor pretty much thought his life was ending. Matt Smith's 11th Doctor portrayal, you see he's kind of silly. He dances about. He's just trying to enjoy what he feels are his last days, because he knows that he only has 12 regenerations. That's it. So there will be no 13th. So technically, this 12th Doctor is actually the 13th regeneration. That's a whole convoluted thing too, because was it David Tennant, I believe, that had to use the TARDIS regeneration preemptively, but he regenerated himself again. Also, I want to mention that the regeneration of Patrick Troughton into John Pertwee, better yet, the 2nd Doctor to the 3rd Doctor, was a forced regeneration at the hands of the Time Lords in the episode The War Games. Another episode I love to go back to and comment on with you guys. Unfortunately, it's not part of the 50th anniversary Doctor Who collection, so it's going to probably be a little tougher to get my hands on. But we'll see. We shall see how we'll come to acquire that in a proper manner. But yeah, limited regenerations, and they found a way to kind of work around that. Effectively, what happened, if you're not caught up, and I'm sorry for the spoilers, but if you're not caught up, I'm sorry, you had time. In the Christmas episode for Series 7, Matt Smith called upon the Time Lords that were stuck in the vortex. Well, not the vortex, the other dimension, the rip in time and space, the time loop or whatever, the time trap. It's been called different things, but they're in a different place, and there's a break through space and time that he's able to communicate through, and he calls upon them, and they lend him their power. I forget what they call those particles. It's a certain type of energy, Huon energy, I believe it is. Huon particles. So the Huon particles get absorbed directly into the TARDIS, and then Matt Smith gets them, and then he regenerates into Peter Capaldi, and he starts essentially what we assume is a fresh new recycling regeneration cycle. So it's almost like in Series 8 they start off fresh, and because of that, we see this Doctor that's kind of confused about who he is, what his purpose is, because he is. It's almost like he's a baby, and now it's like, well, what does my life mean now? Who am I really? Now he has to think about this. All these things that he's been kind of avoiding. So let's look at just the modern series, right? Ninth Doctor is kind of bitter. He's still kind of war-torn because of the events that happened in Gallifrey and all that stuff. You know, the War Doctor, and making a tough decision to stop the Time War, and, you know, doing something that effectively defeats the Daleks and kind of saves the Time Lords, the Gallifreyan people, or so he thought at the time. And weird things, weird events get launched, put into play, better yet. And so that the Ninth Doctor's kind of bitter, almost Peter Capaldi's 12th Doctor. Then we get a 10th Doctor, played by David Tennant, who's kind of almost emo. He has what people sometimes call the constipation face, permanent poop face, where he gets lost in himself, lost in emotions and in thought, and just kind of drifts off to another place in his mind and his heart. Then the 11th Doctor is far more cuddly. So that we see the 10th Doctor sees the value in friends, but then the 11th Doctor's like, man, family's important, not just friends, family. So he gets married, and, you know, I think he even starts thinking about kids. I mean, he sees Rory and Amy and how happy they are, and he wants some of that. And, well, he does have a kid. No, he doesn't. It gets confusing because of the timey-wimey, wibbly-wobbly. I try not to spoil that too much to you, but the whole River Song saga, the way it ties into Amy and Rory's story and who the Doctor is, it makes you start thinking things like, what, has the Doctor been busy? That we know of, the Doctor only has 2 kids, technically, and a granddaughter. And one of his kids doesn't really count because she's actually a genetic experiment built off of his genes or something. It gets a little crazy, a little weird. So she's kind of a female Time Lord, but she's kind of not. But can she regenerate? I hope she comes back. I know a lot of people didn't like her. I think she actually, if I'm not mistaken, the girl that played Jen, I believe her name was, is actually David Tennant's wife. This is weird how everything comes around full circle behind the scenes. But so yeah, you know, you could say that Matt Smith's Doctor was a lot more kid friendly. And this is the thing with the Doctor Who series. It started off as a show aimed towards kids to make them appreciate history and science and all that stuff, but wrap all that stuff into entertaining stories so they actually would sit down and pay attention. But then it became so much more than that, and throughout the series we've seen that they've struggled with that identity. Is this a family show? Is this a show for adults? Is it a show for kids? Is it a show for everyone? What's going on there? Colin Baker, I'm trying to think who else. You know, all the Doctors have been pretty decent about that. I guess you could say Colin Baker and Peter Davison probably has some of the more morbid, serious stories that maybe you wouldn't want to expose to kids. Unfortunately, we live in a time where, you know, I went to Walker Stalker Con in Atlanta, and it was interesting. there's a lot of kids watching The Walking Dead. That's definitely not a kids show. And you know, I'm pretty liberal when it comes to a lot of my principles and how I do my parenting and whatnot, but I still feel like there's something to be said about maintaining a child's innocence. Because as it is, they're exposed to so many things on the internet and social media, and you know, it's good to not shelter them, but let them enjoy the fun stuff of youth before they have to worry about things like death and sexual tension and romantic interest and all that stuff. There's plenty of time for that, right? And so, you know, this is the kind of stuff that's going on with Doctor Who. I mean, they don't know who they're really for, and Series 8 is definitely not very kid-friendly at all. Some people say it's not a kid's show anymore, and it hasn't been for a long time. But, you know, when you have 6-year-olds growing up on Walker StalkerCon asking questions to panels, they have, it tells you something. I'm not saying that's right, but the Doctor Who is still a lot more accessible than a show that like The Walking Dead. And I'm not saying, you know, you choose the lesser of the greater evils. We definitely have, as fans, longtime fans especially, we hardcore Whovians have certain expectations for this show. So when we see the 12th Doctor, it's easy to get disappointed and say, man, you know, he's so bitter, he's mean towards children, the stories that and adventures they go on are not very kid-friendly, they're actually really bad, they teach bad things, oh, lying is okay, and sacrificing people is alright, and, you know, it's alright to manipulate people and use them as pawns, and, you know, all these themes that really a parent in the right mind would not advocate for their kids, alright? But in some ways, this doctor has been very much a paternal doctor. He's just not a very good parent. I think he's learning how to do that. He cares for Clara. Sometimes it feels like it might be romantic because he's competing with Danny Pink. But I think for the most part, he's really trying to be that paternal doctor. Because here's an interesting thing that should put everything into perspective. Time Lords could choose their regeneration. The earliest example I could think of this is Romana, who quickly turned into Romana 2, a younger, prettier, sassier self, and that was her face. You know, you can always remember her because she had a little silly hat she wore, kind of like on the back of her head. But it gave her character, right? That's part of her thing. But she was very frivolous, and she took on that youthful face that matched that. Quiet, dog. But she actually borrowed the face of a queen they had encountered